Hello there guys and welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week I'm again joined by Matthew B Lloyd, the Golden Age comic extraordinaire and host of the Classic Comics podcast. Now if you tuned in last week you'll know that me and Matt spoke about his love of the Golden Age comics, the Star Wars comics from the 70s and 80s, and a lot of weird and wonderful other things. And this conversation is no different. It's a continuation of that conversation, and we speak about the Star Wars comics and the Star Wars newspaper strips quite a lot, so that's generally what we talk about this week. In the description there are links to many of the things that Matt is involved with, including the Politics in Gotham book that he's involved with, the website he writes reviews for, his multiple contact details and things. All of those are in the description, so make sure you contact him to tell him how much you loved his appearance on this show once you've had a listen. And aside from that guys, that's really it. So, I'll let this conversation continue, but I will be back at the end of this just to give you guys some insight of what's coming up over the next few weeks, what episodes I've got recorded, and a few other bits and pieces I've been involved with too. Make sure you check out the show notes and things because I give information on my Patreon, as well as all the other shows I've recently guested on, and that sort of stuff too. So, without further ado guys, here is, once again, Matt B Lloyd. Welcome to Genuine Chit-Chat, where we have honest conversations with interesting people. And I'm your host, Mike Burton.
There's some races in here that look, yeah, that's a Star Wars race. And others that go, a human cat that looks like they escaped from the Cats movie. No, that's probably not, what, oh, here's a frog. Maybe not. And his name is Gribbet. So it's like,
I mean, it's a testing ground, isn't it?
It really is. But then you have other stuff that's just, you'll like have a spaceport scene that goes, oh, that's exactly what it would look like in Star Wars. That's exactly what a Star Wars spaceport would look like. Yeah. So it's, or this guy with half a head looks kind of like a Cylon from Battlestar Galactica, half his head is a robot, another half is human. I could see that as that works, and the facial, you got a big pointed ear and sort of a knobby head. I can see that. That's a good one. Yeah, it's a Star Wars character. Yeah, the cat lady, not so much.
But it is one of those peculiar things, isn't it? Because with like Star Wars is described as campy in some ways by certain individuals. Yeah. I would say a best way for me, I don't think Star Wars is that campy. I think Doctor Who is very campy. Now I like Doctor Who. I don't love it. I've only seen bits and pieces of the old ones, but I've seen all of the Christopher Eccleston and David Tennant and then a bit of the newer ones as well. But I was more to Star Wars, and obviously when Doctor Who got rebooted in 2005, that's when Revenge of the Sith came out. So that's when a lot of the slew of Star Wars games and new resurgence of Star Wars fans came out. So I just had easy pickings. And one of the things I found is that with the sort of campiness is that Doctor Who has it a lot worse in certain areas. But with the Star Wars, it's a very peculiar thing because, I mean, when you think about it, having a guy in a big black outfit, breathing heavily, talking about joining the dark side, that is quite lame and quite campy. It's like I love Star Wars, like it's one of my favourite things, but you look at that on paper, you go, what? That doesn't, what? And they're shining light swords and they're fighting with them. That, what? But then you see it and you go, this is amazing. This is so immersive. You feel like you're in this bizarre, campy universe. But then when you do delve into the other content, there's certain books and there's certain other content where you get into it. It gets so weird. It's almost beyond saving. And I would just be interested to know your thoughts on where the line is. Because obviously, Jackson, the talking rabbit person, that's probably a bit too much for Star Wars. But like, Jabba the Hutt, the Giant Slug isn't, which I'm agreeing with you, but it's just like, there's that weird disconnect, isn't there?
Yeah, there's like I guess a silliness aspect. Like there's nothing silly rooted in this guy all dressed in black with a terrifying sounding voice that sounds like he's got heavy breathing problems at the same time. There's nothing inherently silly about that, but a giant pink rabbit, there's something silly about that. Just to keep it all within the movies. It's almost like, Lucas read those little comics and said, now how can we make something really silly for the movies? Oh, Jar Jar Binks. That kind of, to me, Jar Jar is... He's
like a frog rabbit person.
Yes, exactly. It's like, he is silly. I mean, he's got the floppy ears even. He is silly to me, and maybe the Ewoks aren't silly. They're just like too cute and lovable. It seems like something added purely for merchandising and marketing it to even littler kids. Because here's something interesting. I saw Star Wars, the first movie, as a kid when it first came out, loved it, totally immersed, was just like, I need these toys, need to buy toys and the trading cards and, Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars. We're playing Star Wars in this, and outside with the little cardboard rolls of wrapping paper, you unwrap, and those are our lightsabers. We did that. Empire comes out. Oh my gosh, it's even better than Star Wars. This is awesome. Oh my God, Luke's his sister. What? Or that's the third movie, but Luke or Darth Vader's his dad. No way. Oh my gosh. And we're totally into it, right? By the time Jedi came out, Return of the Jedi, I had, believe it or not, I had lost a lot of interest. That I didn't see Jedi until a year later when it was at the Dollar Theater. I didn't even care about seeing it immediately. And I don't know if it was just the silliness, kind of the Ewok silliness. Like it just seemed like, I don't know, there's something about it. It seemed like it didn't seem like it was going in a straight line. It seemed like it was changing tones for, you know what I mean? Because, the Ewoks definitely don't fit the seriousness, I guess, of Darth Vader, or the seriousness of, destroying the whole planet with the Death Star, And honestly, I thought using the Death Star again the second time seemed like, oh, we ran out of ideas. How about with the Death Star? Okay. It didn't, there could have been some other thing, which is actually in here. There's one of the storylines in here that Vader has this pet project that he's building another weapon that's going to be even greater than the Death Star that they have to destroy.
Legends does that a lot, to be fair. In Legends, the amount of Sith super weapons and planet killers and stuff is one of those things where I quite like with, like, I like the MCU, I like, all that sort of jazz. But one thing I am getting a bit sick of in Star Wars and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and DC and all of it is just when you've got something that's like, what happens if we fail? The entire universe is doomed. It's like, can we just ease a little bit back from that? It's not like every single time you watch an action film and it's like, there's a bomb, it's about to go off. What should we do? And you've got that counter going. And then it's literally always the last possible second they disarm it. It happens in Captain America 2, which is one of the best MCU movies. But I was watching it the other day, Winter Soldier with Megan, and it was really awesome. I still love it. I've seen it so many times. But I was just like, can't they just have a bomb go off and someone just diffuses it not within 3 seconds of it going off? And it's the same sort of thing with the world ending. It's like, oh no, well, the universe is going to end if we don't stop this bad guy. It's like, but now we know the universe isn't going to end. That's not how this film is going to end. If you said, I'm going to try and bomb this city, then you go, oh, well, the heroes could fail, and that could lead to some really interesting stories. And obviously, I know Star Wars is a bit different because the one of the opening scenes is basically a planet blowing up. But you see what I mean? Like it's just one of those tropes, and I know that Legends, they did it a lot, which I think is a part of the reason they recanonize stuff. Because I'm not saying all writers who do this are lazy, but it is a very easy thing to do, to go, what's the big bad going to do this time? Well, we don't want to do this because it's too complicated for story. We don't do this because it doesn't jive with the movies. We can't do this. What should we do? Let's just have them have a weapon that can blow up a planet not quite as quickly or efficiently as the Death Star. It's like, okay, another one. And then, you got the sequel trilogy. You won't even get into that. Let's have another Death Star. Okay, cool.
Instead of diffusing a bomb at the last second, you could always just throw it off the end of a pier.
Yeah, or any other thing. I mean, there's loads of those sort of films where, I watched things Wonder Woman, where she throws it really high into the air, and then she does, to beat the last baddie in a room, she clings her bracelets together and causes an explosion that blows the whole wall out. So you're just thinking,
why didn't you do that sooner?
Did you not just either do that first or don't get rid of a bomb and then blow something up when you're in the room? Weirdness and strangeness. But I've vaguely lost my train of thought, apart from super weapons and things, which is what you were speaking about. Super weapons and the weirdness of Star Wars. Yeah. So I have interest with this newspaper strip, like how, with storyline wise, how long is it? One consistent story? Are there quite a few of them? I know you said there were the dailies and the Sundays, but I'm just interested in the book you've got.
I guess there's maybe 6 storylines. So and I think, interesting is what they were saying in how they broke down the reformatted them was they tried to do it so they would end an issue in a place that felt like an end. Whereas initially, I think, like all newspaper strips, they sort of continue and roll on, and you sort of introduce the next concept at the end of the preceding story. So they have manipulated it enough that I can't tell if it was originally all strung together like you would expect in a newspaper strip, or if they actually had ends where the Falcon flies off and then the next day or the next Sunday you would have a brand new opening sequence that wouldn't be connected. I haven't been able to figure that because of the way they've reformatted them. But it feels like about 6 or 7 individual stories that are being told. Maybe more than that, actually, thinking about how many reprinted issues are supposed to be in here.
What intrigues me, I think, the most is obviously the fact that I never even knew there was a Star Wars newspaper strip. But when I was looking up and doing a little bit of research about this, I found out, because you mentioned on my Q&A episode as well, the Splinter in the Mind's Eye, which I'd not ever heard of. And I looked it up, and basically when Star Wars came out, they obviously thought it was going to be a flop. Yeah. And then it wasn't. It was, a massive success, which it should have been because it's excellent. And then they did this multimedia project, which they've, since Star Wars has been a thing, they're always doing it. They do it whenever a new film comes out or a new game or something. They release loads of content around the main product. And what I found is that the newspaper strips, Splinter of the Mind's Eye, and the Marvel Star Wars comics, all of them were the first ever it was called the Expanded Universe before it became Legends.
Right.
So they were the first ever bits of content for the Expanded Universe. Now, I'd never heard of Splinter of the Mind's Eye. I've heard of the Star Wars Marvel comics, but only really because I've been getting into, these new ones. And whenever I look up stuff, people are always talking about the comparisons. And then the newspaper strips, which, aside from obviously the collection you've got, I'm not sure if there were ever repeats of that. Like, if I was a kid, there were Star Wars strips in the newspapers, I'd have gone mental. Garfield is one thing, but Star Wars. So it's one of those weird things with like a multimedia project where I think what Star Wars has always done very well is the marketing side. And obviously Lucas basically, he didn't, I think, if I'm remembering it right, please correct me if I'm wrong, but he basically didn't even really ask for many shares of what money Star Wars would make. He basically just got the studio to agree to give him almost every merchandising right. And then he just invested loads of money and time into, obviously, as you say, Horseman or Hammerhead. And so because they did this, you had the kids who everyone's at least heard of Star Wars. And I think that's the way you did it. You've got it in the newspapers, you've got it in the comics, you've got it on the on TV screens or, cinema screens and things. You've got the toys, you've got the cereal, you've got everything. And it's just like, I wonder how much Star Wars can attribute its popularity to these things you wouldn't expect. Like, if you said to me, right, how important do you think a Star Wars newspaper strip is? I would have gone, sorry, if you asked me 6 months ago, I'd go, sorry, there was a Star Wars newspaper strip. Clearly it's not that important. But I wonder if you went back and you only had the films out, and maybe just the films and maybe the figures, if it would be as much of a buzz. Because I feel like every little piece of the puzzle kind of makes the set.
I think remembering the fervor there was over the toys. I mean, I remember when the Yoda figure was coming out before Empire, that you could go and like pre-order it at the toy store and put your name down on a list so that when a first shipment arrived, there were none to be sold unless you had already put your name down. I mean, and it was like, I don't know, like $6 or $7 back then for like the brand new figure, and it should have been like $2, And I just remember being like, God, that's a lot. And my mom be like, that's a lot. And I was like, but it's, come and, come on, mommy, please, I'm only 10 years old, buy it. But I sold a ton of those things. And I think, with having the comics and the newspaper strip, there was such a fervor and a hunger for content that the movie can only satisfy so much, and back then you couldn't go and buy the movie and watch it. You saw that movie and you went, oh my, I don't know how many times I've seen the theater the first run. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm sure it was, 7, 8, 9, something like that, something ridiculous. And then like it would come to the dollar theater a year later. You'd see another 3 or 4 times then. And then finally, like probably just around the time Empire came out, they probably showed it on TV finally. So there's just no other. It's like now we have these Marvel Universe movies and you can watch whichever one you want pretty much now. because you've got a whole collection of DVDs or whatever, or you've got the streaming service, and you can just go, I'm really excited about that new Avengers movie. I'm gonna go watch the last 3, and you can fill it, and you can rewatch and get into the whole thing without having to go too far to get. But back then, as a kid, you had the movies that were when they were out, and then you had the toys. But then with the comics, you could get a Star Wars fix every month with a comic. And if your newspaper carried the newspaper strip, it probably did a lot to sustain the interest over time between, because back then it was 3 years between movies. It wasn't, they turn around some in 2 years now with some of the sequels they do, but it was a solid 3 years between movies back then, and it probably sustained the interest in the concepts. And they would don't forget the toys. They would keep releasing more and more obscure figures later, like you would get, like, I guess, Empire comes out and you get the initial figure set that includes like the new characters like Yoda and Boba Fett. And then a little bit later, I think it was a little bit later, they started coming out with the other bounty hunters that appear in that one scene, Both and IG-88 and Dengar, those guys. It's like, and then you get some other, variant, maybe, I don't know. I'm pretty sure Luke in the Bespin Fatigues was one of the first ones, but they would just have another set come out, another play set, another toy, another, obscure character that's, the movie's been out for a year, but oh, hey, remember this background character here? Don't you want an action figure of him? Well, nothing else to buy. Sure.
All the Yoda figures are out and I only have $2, so let's get Wars, man.
Exactly. Or Snaggletooth. That was the other weird one from the first one, because there was 2 different versions of him, a tall one and a short one. I thought it was always weird, but anyways, I think it's I think it probably did sustain the interest, and because kids are constantly playing with the toys, and I don't want to say it's a movie that only appeals to kids, because it's not true, because plenty of adults back then enjoyed Star Wars. My wife has a very different experience of seeing Star Wars for the first time. She's 3 years younger than me, so she would have only been 4 when the first Star Wars movie came out. So, and back then you took your kids to movies. Everybody went. You did. It wasn't like, well, we're going to the movies and the kids are staying home. It was you're taking your family. So, my brother. Not my brother, my wife's brother, who's 2 years younger. I don't know if he went. I can't remember that. He'd only been 2. But my wife clearly remembers them going to the theater, and the dads in the neighborhood wanted to see it. They were my father-in-law was a Marine, and so all the Marine dads in the neighborhood wanted to see Star Wars, and all the kids were going to go too. And there was that first scene I described earlier with the Star Destroyer coming over the top. Oh my gosh! And she got up and said, "I'm sitting in the lobby. No thanks."
Wow.
4 years old. I mean, she's 4. It's okay. At the same time, 3 or 4 years old, I saw Alice in Wonderland and she fell down the hall. I screamed and we left. So it's not, it's not unheard of to have something happen when you're little like that. But that was the first time she went to the movies to see Star Wars. She saw it again later, of course, enjoyed it later on. But as a little girl, that was just too much. But what was my point about that? Oh, adults also wanted to see it. So there was excitement amongst adults as well for what came next, not just kids. And I think, some adults probably went because their kids wanted to see it and they're like, oh, hey, this is good. And it wasn't like, some movies you go to your kids with and did you have a good time, honey? Oh yeah, that was great. Great. Hope they don't make it back, But plenty of adults enjoyed it too. So it's Harry Potter, my kids the wife and I saw Harry Potter when it first came out because our kids weren't born yet. But when they were old enough and my daughter read the books, they wanted to see Harry Potter. I'd only ever seen the first movie originally. It didn't do a whole lot for me on the first movie. But once my daughter got into them, we started watching them later. So, and we all enjoyed them eventually, to the point where at the end, I really did want to go see it and see what happened. And it was a good series. But yeah, adults are interested. So you have this hybrid of kids and adults, and the kids are fanatical about it, and there's toys and there's comics, and the excitement is maintained between the movies, so that when there's just a fever pitch. And I don't know if the comics themselves tried to lead you up to the next movie in any way. I don't recall that. I guess have to get the few issues before the Empire adaptation, but I know the comics would try and, like in the newspaper strip here, we were talking before we started recording about Boba Fett showing up, and that storyline is right after the movie comes out, Empire comes out. Mm-hmm. So it's like he probably gets more coverage in this story than he does in the movie.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure he does. I mean, in Empire Strikes Back, I don't think he even talks in the whole thing. I think he's just there. I think he even does anything until like Return of the Jedi.
Well, doesn't he get Han at the end of Empire?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, he does. I suppose I suppose yeah. I guess the thing is he tracks them. The whole point is he's the one who tracks them and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And then I suppose he does something in Equus, but obviously he doesn't do anything badass. He doesn't have any really, cool lines. He just looks really cool and does a little bit. But then the holiday special cartoon, and you've got the newspaper strips, and maybe I don't know if he's in the comics as well, but like once they end, oh, that character looks cool, let's just put him in all this other content because George Lucas didn't utilize him enough. And then by the time Return of the Jedi came out, and it's like, oh, Boba Fett's going to be in there for more than like 2 seconds, people are like, what did you just say? Boba Fett is going to be in this movie more than a woman. And the hype around him, and it still continues today, when he's in The Mandalorian, and people went, I mean, I think he's a cool character, but like people lost their minds when they like Boba Fett's going to come back in The Mandalorian. Like, oh my god, it's my childhood. It's like since the 80s, I've been thinking about Boba Fett, and he's never had his time to shine. It's just I love the passion of people of the small background characters, and Boba Fett realistically, he's not a big, massive character. He is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he wasn't then. When George Lucas made Empire, he wasn't thinking, yes, this is the Boba Fett movie. He was thinking, no, this is the Luke Skywalker Darth Vader movie. It's so weird how things land.
What's really funny about the way he's depicted in the comic, and when I say funny, I don't mean haha funny. I mean he literally looks like the artist had the action figure in front of him to draw him. Like the jetpack on the back looks much more like it does on the action figure than the movie. He's not nearly as
I'm looking right now.
He's not nearly as battle damaged in the comic as he is as he looks in the movie. It's really kind of funny. It's like I can just imagine Russ Manning sitting there with a little Boba Fett. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I think that's my favorite, almost him really close looking almost at the camera in the panel when he's gun there. That's such a cool thing.
Yeah, or is this? Go ahead.
I was going to say with it as well, because some of the panels you sent me, the thing that I found the funniest was it's the panel here that I've got, and it was the panel, I think the panel after this, but it was the one where he's basically skiing, and him and Luke have a conversation about skiing. I think, and I'm trying to. Here you go. It's got Luke saying like a few. It's hard to get a feel of these things, and you've got Boba Fett next to him skiing, saying just keep your balance. The more you lean forward, the faster you go. And you're just thinking, so Boba Fett in Before the New Canon was giving Luke Skywalker skiing lessons in a newspaper strip. I mean, is that not the craziest thing you've ever heard?
It is completely bonkers. It is completely bonkers, and that's kind of the funny thing. It's like I just didn't expect Luke to have a not just an encounter with Boba Fett, but like a mini team up, because they have to team up and work together to get away from these weird looking whatevers they are that they're trying to escape from. I'm not even sure who it's supposed to be at this point, but it's just like almost like a baboon face, like a face that like a mechanized baboon with the hair, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite funny, but it is, as you say, it's quite stark, because the two panels you sent, I've got 32 different photos here from you of various things for the listeners, and essentially there's the one which is number 26 that you sent me, which was where you've got Boba Fett talking to Luke and things. He's right up close to him and stuff, and it's a really, really cool shot. And the panel before that was the skiing thing, which was really bizarre. But then a few panels after that, you've got him approaching Han Solo and being quite fearful. You know, Han Solo tries to punch him in the face. He hurts his hand on his helmet, and then he shoots out his flamethrowers. And like that shot, that image there, which I'll zoom in. I'm sure you're thinking of the right one. But
I pulled it up. I've got it. I'm following along with
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And when the flames are going past Han, he's just in the middle. Like that is a really cool panel. I really appreciate the art in that, and just the whole. Yeah, Han Solo punches someone in the face. They're wearing a helmet. What's the first thing he says? He says, blasted, Iron Pot, and is holding his hand. He's not even recognised the fact he's having fire shot at him. He has to have a quip in before anything else, which is perfect.
It is. I thought it was also interesting that they're on a snow planet, so that if you just watched Empire and it opens on Hoth and you're reading the newspaper strip, you've got Boba Fett from Empire, and they're on an ice planet too. And it's a neat, they're trying to tie in like what you were saying as far as, you know, keeping it going. If these things, it's like, that's to me, an obvious, well, you just saw the movie. Here's more content that's going to make you think of the movie, even if it's not the story or a sequel or a true prequel. It's using the same elements to tie in your experience with the movie. Yeah, that did Boba Fett ever use flamethrowers like that in the movies?
Oh God, I should really know this. His dad Django definitely does. I think he does. I have. Thing is, the problem is with me now is that I have so much knowledge about everything else that happens in Star Wars that when people ask me specifics about the movies now, I'm like, oh God, is that like... It's
like, was that the movie, or was that a book, or was that a comic, or was that a TV show? Or
so I'm trying to remember in my mind's eye. It's like, okay, what am I seeing? I know Django for absolute certainty has a flamethrower. I'm pretty sure. I think Boba Fett does have one, but to be honest with you, I'm not sure you actually do see music. I'm pretty certain he uses it in the comics, which is the thing I'm getting confused by, because it's funny as well, because in the canon comics, Boba Fett's the reason Darth Vader knows the rebel who blew up the Death Star's surname is Skywalker. That's all Boba Fett. He tracked him down and has a fight with him in Kenobi's hut. And so Boba Fett is fighting with Luke in Kenobi's hut, basically trying to find more information about him. And Luke manages to use the Force and throwing something at him and escape without really fully understanding what just happened. And then Boba Fett goes back to Vader and says, oh, well, the only thing I know is this surname is Skywalker. I hope that's okay. And then Vader's staring out into space on a Star Destroyer and all of the glass around him just cracks. And then the comic ends.
Wow.
That's
cool.
brilliant.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing. But in all honesty, I think in Return of the Jedi, I think he does use a flamethrower, but I can't be 100% certain, which is terrible considering how much I like Star Wars.
Well,
it's excuse for another rewatch.
I saw this and was like, he's got flamethrowers on his hands? That's really cool. Holy cow. That's awesome. Why did I not know that? That's what I thought.
I mean, it's also, it's one of those things as well where with the prequels, like, rewrote a lot of legends as well. That's another reason, because there's these whole backstories about Boba Fett where in like the 80s and 90s, these authors, bless them, wrote these big storylines of who he really was, who his dad was, how he got into it. And then George Lucas made the prequels and went, no, he's a clone. Yeah, Boba Fett is a clone of Jango Fett. And you're like, what? Who's Jango? Oh, that guy is basically the same.
It's the same thing.
I mean, it's cool. Now it's cool. You know, now it's cool because you get the whole thing of basically prequel era, the world's greatest bounty hunter was Jango, and then the sort of original era, the best bounty hunter was Boba. And that's a really cool dynamic and it works really well. But it's just one of those things where it's like, when you read these things where you go, oh, there's a newspaper strip where they had flamethrowers. It's like, and if this was before Return of the Jedi came out, who knows that Lucas might have gone, oh, he's flamethrowers, that's quite cool. Let's just put that in there. Like, you don't know what influence it had in the reverse, in a sense, if you know what I mean. Because a lot of the writers worked with George Lucas. I know the guy who did Splinter in the Mind's Eye. He had I think he had the original script, which was called like Luke Starkiller, The Young Adventures of Luke Starkiller. Yeah. And he had like George Lucas let him have like early drafts of that script, and then I think when Star Wars originally then got released and they weren't sure if it was going to do very well, Lucas let this guy, I think it's Alan Dean Foster.
It is. Yeah.
I was right. Good.
You're right.
So they let him write the book, write basically the spiritual sequel to A New Hope, obviously to Star Wars as it was called, because they weren't sure if they were ever going to make a sequel. They're like, look, if we can't, we'll just continue it via books. And so he let him look at early drafts of the script and things. And obviously this guy had the ideas maybe before the full tweaks had happened for the final production of the film, because obviously when a book gets released, it's not like, oh, the writer finishes it and then the next day it gets released. It's like you finish it, there's drafts and drafts and drafts and editing and blah, 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 publishing, and then it gets released. So it's like the timeline of when it actually all happened. I wonder if with a lot of the expanded universe, how much of a hand Lucas had in the newspaper strips or this or that. Because I know like nowadays, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are two of the main heads of the new canon, basically.
Oh, wow.
And Dave Filoni, he's the one who did all the animated series and stuff, and obviously Jon Favreau's doing The Mandalorian. Well, Dave Filoni's like friends with George Lucas. Like, he has him in his phone. So he says sometimes he'll just have a Star Wars question and he'll just call Lucas and go, I'm thinking about doing this, but I don't know if it would work. What do you think? And like sometimes he said he doesn't always take what Lucas says as word verbatim, but it's quite nice to have the person who created the character of, you know, if you create the character of Obi-Wan and you put him in the situation and you're not 100% sure how Obi-Wan would get out of the situation, you call the guy who created him and he goes, I don't know, well, he probably wouldn't do that. So I wouldn't go with that idea of yours. That one, maybe, but maybe you do something like this. And then he kind of leaves it, and then Dave Filoni gets to sit back and kind of reevaluate things and work out how to go from there in the story. And I know with Splinter in the Mind's Eye, Lucas and Alan Dean Foster had some sort of connection there, because I think there was an interview with one of them and they were talking about the other one. So I do wonder how much Lucas may or may not have had a hand in some of this stuff. Or the other way around.
I read, and I can't remember what book it's in. I think it's the first... I think it's issue 7 of the original Star Wars comic from the 70s, where they talk about, at least for the comic at the time, they were told you can't do this and this and this and this and this, but otherwise, go ahead. So they knew there were certain things they couldn't deal with, but otherwise they had things. So that's why you get, I guess, pink rabbits and stuff like that.
They weren't told not to do that. Can we do a talking rabbit in a spacesuit?
Yeah.
There's nothing here that says you can't. Okay. Here we go.
So I guess they had a little bit of contact from Lucasfilm, if it was even Lucasfilm at the time, or if it was just whatever it was. You can do this and this, but or you can't do this and this and this. So they tried their best, I guess, to create new things and concepts without trotting on anything that they planned on, I guess. So it was, and I guess there was probably somebody that was reading the scripts at some point going, oh, well, you screwed up. You can't do that here. Or, oh, okay. I guess at some point. I don't know. It's a great, what's so neat is that there's so much freedom, because the only canon was the movie, and they were just, let's tell some space adventure stories here. So some feel more like, Flash Gordon type stories. Some look more like that. Some look, just completely different than what you think of with Star Wars. And then other times there's a sweet spot where you go, that looks like it could be Coruscant before it ever was shot in a movie, that kind of thing. Even if it's not Coruscant, it has that kind of look, Something about the art I wanted to point out, and I may have only sent one panel. After the Boba Fett flamethrower stuff, the next picture I think I sent you is just a shot of Leia, a close-up on Leia.
Yes.
Now,
under the blanket.
Yeah, the important part about that, and I guess I really should have sent the previous 2 pages just because you can see it kind of better there. This storyline is drawn by a penciler named Rick Hoberg, who I knew mostly from Batman and All-Star Squadron comics in the 80s. But it's inked by a fellow by the name of Dave Stevens, and it's not the whole story. It's literally the next page after they have the little flamethrower bit. The very next page starts. Actually, it may be the very next panel on the bottom of that page, but I'm not sure. Is inked by a different artist by the name of Dave Stevens. And have you ever heard of The Rocketeer? Ever see that movie?
Oh,
Rocketeer?
Yeah, the film. I've not seen it, but I know of it.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, that was based on a very short-lived comic in the early 80s and mid-80s. That is one of the best things you're going to read from independent comics of that era. It was written, created, and drawn by Dave Stevens. And you can just immediately see the difference in the art. I mean, there's a picture. I'll send this to you afterwards just so you can see it. There is a picture of Luke here that is just, it looks so much like Luke or Mark Hamill. It's crazy. It's just, he's so good. And there's all of a sudden all this extra detail on Boba Fett's helmet with battle damage and textures and stuff. And then the picture of Leia just looks, you can really see Dave Stevens saying, I know his work really well because I love The Rocketeer, but you can really see his hand at work here. And it's almost like there's just a glimpse of this. There's nothing wrong with what Rick Hoberg and the other inker are doing. But then all of a sudden you get Dave Stevens and it's like, oh my gosh, Dave Stevens. Because I'll tell you, when I was reading this, I wasn't reading all the credits at first. And I'm reading through and I'm turning the pages. I turn the page and I go, who's drawing that? Somebody else is drawing. So what happened? And he's just inking it. And his technique with inking it and finishing that is just so good. I just really wanted to point out, because it's strange, because it's only a couple pages. It is literally maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 12 to 15 panels. No, maybe 20 panels that are Dave Stevens. And then it goes to another inker, Alfredo Alcala, who is great in his own right, but he has a very different touch to the page than Stevens does. But I just wanted to point that out because I really love Dave Stevens' work, and I felt I would be remiss if I did not point out how wonderful those few pages of his work are. I will send you another shot of the 2 full pages that where you really see Luke and you get some of that Boba Fett battle damage, because it's just such a neat, for the artist and for the artistic listener that's interested in the art as well as the story and all the general concept stuff. It's just, and of course all the Al Williamson stuff is like that. I mean, I sent you one where where you see that jungle planet I was talking about, and you can really see how Al Williamson is.
Was this the panel you're talking about?
Yeah, that jungle planet there.
It's weird. I was on that one specifically because I was just looking at this art and I was going to say, in this panel that you sent me, this is probably one of the ones I'll use when I post on social media and stuff, and it was it's page 372 if you're not already there. That what's really interesting about it is that what I found with older comics is, when I've read certain old comics, they feel very dated, and you read them and they're quite pop arty, I find, in the wrong ways sometimes. But I find that when you have an old school comic before, everything could be digital, when you get, probably earlier than the 90s really, but like when you get even earlier than that, proper analog, some of the artistry and the detail I love. And on this page specifically, what's very interesting is 2 things. First of all, I really like the level of detailing in all aspects of the page that you sent me, both the walker itself, but also the jungle planet and things. But one thing that I noticed is that the ATST in this panel obviously doesn't look like a normal ATST. This ATST is used in the new canon in Star Wars Rebels, which is set a few years before A New Hope, which is the predecessor to the ATST Walker you see in, I think, Empire, but primarily in
Jedi?
In Return of the Jedi, when they're in when they're in the Endor, and you see, and when I always think of ATSTs, I always just think of the Ewoks logs swinging and crushing his head. As the first thing I think of with ATSTs. And this is, I think it's an ATRT, if I'm remembering it right, but it's basically just the predecessor, or the scout version, predecessor to the ATST. And I'm looking at, this is in a newspaper strip, written only a few years after Star Wars and Empire, if that.
It's 1981. It's
81. Jeez.
So that means it was probably written at the end of 80. And drawn at the end.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even know if George Lucas said about doing this, or if it was just the artist, and they just went, look, we want to do an ATST, but let's make it look a little bit different. And they go, okay. Or maybe they were like, draw an ATST, and they just forgot what it looks like and drew this. So it's like, this is a spitting image of what they use in Star Wars Rebels. It's basically, if anyone listening, it's an ATST, so it's a box on legs, but on the side of the box, there's 2, it almost looks like eyes, don't they? Like almost eyes slits.
Yeah.
Where the guns are kind of, I presume that a soldier with a weapon could poke a gun out of there. It's probably inspired by sort of, war trenches when you've got the sort of, I can't remember what the terms are, but the holes in the
bunkers,
walls. But like
the pillboxes.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's so amazing to see that there must be so much content now that me and new Star Wars consumers go, that's a brilliant idea. Kudos to that person who created it. And then it goes, oh no, that was the Star Wars Rebels from 2016 or whatever. But you do realize it was in a newspaper strip in 81. It's like, Jesus. it just goes to show like how much people need to go back and check out some of these old things of just the beauty and craziness of the rabbit, the weirdness and stuff, of seeing Boba Fett. Like there's so many cool layers in different ways. There's almost like no matter what you like about Star Wars, if you go back and consume the old stuff, you'll find something that connects with you.
Who was the animation director on that Rebel series? Do you know?
I know Dave Filoni is the showrunner, but I do also know that they use a lot of Ralph Mcquarrie concept art in Rebels.
Okay.
And I know that he's the main one who did like the artwork for Star Wars.
Okay.
So if you look at some of the original concept art for Star Wars, I don't know how much you've seen of it, but there's a creature that looks a little bit like Chewie that isn't.
Okay.
And he's kind of got big eyes and like pointy ears and stuff. I'll find the picture. But basically, I would recommend Star Wars Rebels. It's excellent. But Dave Filoni is the showrunner. He's the guy who basically was the overview of everything. I don't know specifically about animation. Why'd you ask? Sorry.
I just wonder because if you are an animator or a comic book artist, someone you're going to look at is Al Williamson. And this is an Al Williamson panel that we're talking about. And either he got it from concept art that was already done, like you said, maybe, or somebody's looking back and going, man, I love those Al Williamson things. I want to do that. You know, I love Al Williamson. Yeah. I want to pay homage to Al Williamson in this animated show by using his design of the ATRT that I guess you called it. I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have remembered what it was
that's one of those things. Well, I think it's ATRT. I know ATST is all-terrain scout transport, and then AT-AT is all-terrain armor transport and things, and then AT... I think ATRT might be the one in Revenge of the Sith. That's what I mean. I've got too much information in my brain. But it's all post-it notes in there. But I was just going to show you just while we're on here. So this is the original concept art, which I'm sure you've seen before, but like that's the original concept art. So you've got like... that thing's meant to be Chewie. Oh. And that down there is meant to be R2, right?
Oh, okay.
Now, look at the poster. Look at the poster for Star Wars Rebels. There's basically an R2 unit. He's got a little arm sticking out there. Huh. There's a guy who looks a little bit more like Luke Starkiller. Oh. And then that guy there, he's basically Chewie concept art. And they created a species for him.
Oh, wow.
And the character's called Zeb, and he's a Lasat. And the funny thing is... in universe, the Lasat species always get confused with Wookiees. But obviously, the genius of that is because the original concept art for Chewbacca looks like a Lasat, and they change it to make him more like a dog, to make him more hairy.
Right.
So out of universe, the original concept art looks a bit like this. So in universe, they've cleverly made it so that the species always gets confused by the other one. And there's just loads of little bits like that I just think... they're so cool. And there's so much Star Wars that I think comes from unused old stuff. Yeah. And I think that this conversation especially has shown how much and how much fun there is. So I just want to say, like, it's we've been chatting now for an hour and 40 minutes, which I feel like we probably could... this feels like about 20 minutes to me. I feel like we could probably chat for another hour and 40 minutes.
I am
easy.
very verbose. I have the gift of gab, as it were. I can go on for a long time, so I'm often told...
Same. That's my biggest
problem. We got to stop.
So what we'll do then, right? I'll clap my hand to say we'll stop. But let's just say I want to say I'll let you have the sort of final statement of things before closing off here. But I want to say obviously thank you for coming on the show. I loved speaking with you one-on-one. But I want to say to all the listeners, please go check out Classic Comics, because you will probably be like me, which is when you heard the premise, bluntly, you weren't sure, like, why would I want to listen to some stuff at Old School Comics? You really don't know what you're missing. Like, the Daredevil one is like, I've listened to, like, the original Batman one was quite cool. The Catman one was interesting. Miss Fury you mentioned. The Human Torch one was really good. When you spoke about Human Torch, and was it Submariner? Yeah. I really like that story because you talk about the original Human Torch and things and how different he was. Like, so there's so many threads that you didn't realize you wanted untangled until you listen to Classic Comics. And, just some of this stuff, and the Captain America episode you did is really cool, listening about some of the dialogue they use and the general, like, you did it as a special off episode, but I think it's really cool of how you compared it to the first Avenger. And I only watched the first Avenger about 2 weeks before listening to that episode by chance. So it was really cool when I went on Marvel Unlimited and read the first Captain America comic while you were speaking about it, because I was like, when you were explaining certain parts, I was like, that sounds really cool. I want to see that. So I want to thank you because your show is amazing, and I want to say to all the listeners out here, please check out Classic Comics. It's every other Monday on Comics in Motion and things, and you do a variety of episodes enough that makes it interesting, but also there are so many interesting aspects that one wouldn't expect without first hearing your show. So I think it was a really interesting way to kind of, not even necessarily an entry point, but it's just like opening a door of just like, oh wow, there's so much stuff here to get into. So I want to thank you for that and just say, what are your sort of, anything you didn't get to say in our conversation, feel free to say it now, and then last little plugs and stuff, and I'll include links in the description and stuff, but please.
Anything I didn't get to include, I forget. I don't know anymore. I was on a roll. I was waxing about how great some of the art was, because I mean, as much fun as I had reading the stories and experiencing a great amount of nostalgia for Star Wars of my youth, because it's one of those seminal moments in people that are my age that saw Star Wars in the theater and were all caught up in it, and then to be able to hear your show and rekindle some of that, and just for the record, I have read the Darth Vader book that you recommended, that I was I did read that, and I really enjoyed that. I haven't gotten volume 2 yet, but I certainly plan to. And one of the things I noticed about that was it just that this doesn't have to be too. I'll try to make this short because I know.
You don't have to rush anything. Please, I'm giving you the floor. You don't have to rush.
Okay.
But, yeah.
I found that it felt much more cohesive in fitting into the Star Wars universe than so much of this other stuff does. And I found that the comics add to the movie canon in ways that you can't do with the movies. You're never going to get a one-off or a Darth Vader movie, but you can have a whole run of Darth Vader comics that work on developing his character. And the particular comic we're talking about is, what's it called? I'm sure you remember. Is it Lord of the Sith or something like? Or it's
Darth Vader. I think it's Dark Lord of the Sith. It's the 2017 run by Charles Soule.
Exactly. So I got the first volume of that, and it gives more about how he's dealing with becoming Vader after having, just been Anakin, and that's something you just don't get enough of in the movies. And then there's certain like action sequences that in a movie would be. You're never going to see Darth Vader jump around and leap and have this acrobatic quality, which he should as a Sith, because whoever's wearing that costume, you can't be Ray Park in that costume like you can, when he's Darth Maul, and you can't get that in that Darth Vader costume. So I really enjoyed that aspect of that book as well, and just how it. I mean, you almost like Darth Vader when you read it. Maybe not totally, but
it is a weird one, isn't it? You're just you are still like a genocidal maniac, but you are. I feel for you a bit, don't you? Because you were a slave when you were a child, then you're a slave to the Jedi, and now you're a slave to basically the worst person in the entire universe.
And it makes his character more complex, which is something I feel like the movies tried to do and wanted to do, and that was the basic idea of having him be Luke's father. Was to add some complexity and depth there, but it just never, I feel like, plays out right in the movies. Whereas I feel like the comics have the opportunity, since they are not a 2-hour movie, it's multiple comics, you can really build that idea and develop it and show those subtleties in his character that, maybe eventually will come out to turn him back to the light side at the very end. But it's just a very enjoyable journey. And I really, I wouldn't have read that had I not listened to your show and have you talk about some of those books and say how great they were, and hearing some of the other stories surrounding it. That if you didn't cover that just yet, because you hadn't when I read it, but yeah, so that was it's just something really different I find from the legend stuff. Is that the canon, the new canon stuff seems to be so concise and fit so well with the official movies, as opposed to some of the other stuff we've talked about. It's so much fun and nostalgic as it is. It just goes, that's not quite right. Pink bunny rabbits and cat ladies and all that stuff.
that's where Dr. Aphra comes in. There's a comic series which is Dr. Aphra, and she first appeared in the first run of Vader comics, which is by Kieran Gillen. But the first run of Vader comics are set between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, whereas the ones I recommend to you are set obviously just after Revenge of the Sith, which I personally prefer. But I will be tackling them on my show soon. I keep teasing them because I went on Scott's show and did Desert Island comics, and 2 of the Vader comics in that run were in there, and then I keep recommending it to people, and people are like, when are you going to do the Vader comics? Like, I'm getting there. So, but I'd say Dr. Aphra, when you finish the Darth Vader comics, she was introduced in the first run of Vader comics. She is the weird and wonderful side of Star Wars. There is a mold in one of the storylines with her that is force sensitive.
A mold.
It's this weird mold. So it's like this. It's like a fungus sort of thing. It's this almost cloud fungus thing that is force sensitive. It's really weird, and I can't explain much more than that because I'd be here for 20 minutes. But she goes. There's another storyline where she finds this ancient crystal. It's meant to be of this ancient Jedi, and so she goes this big fuss to try and basically revive it, just to kind of see what the hell it does. Like, that's her whole game. She just likes cool stuff, and she'll kill people. She's like a rogue archaeologist. She's like Indiana Jones, but morally flipped. And there are so many weird stories in there. There's so many crazy things. There's like brain controlling parasites, force sensitive mold fungus stuff. There's ancient Jedi that are actually really the brain of an AI robot copying a Jedi that's been going insane for like 5,000 years. It's like and it's got technopathy, I think it is, which is the ability to control all machines. That's one arc. That's one story arc. It is, and Vader pops in now every now and then to cause havoc. But Dr. Aphra, I'd say, is the comics that are the weird and the wonderful. The Darth Vader are sort of the cream of the crop. All the other stuff, like the main run of Star Wars comics with with Luke, Han, and Leia, they're the ones which are like, there's a couple of cool stories in there and they're fun, but they definitely feel like that they're kind of just going for the sake of going, right, in a way. You know what I mean? Like, they're not, there's certain arcs where you're like, this isn't actually adding anything really. You're just having the 3 of these people vaguely do stuff together.
I think that
some of the arcs are brilliant.
I think part of the problem may be the fact that there's so much that's been done with those characters already in the movies. Whereas if you're not able, Darth Vader, we know where he goes, but we don't know how he gets from point A to point B. So there's a lot you can tell. Whereas with Luke and Han and Leia, we all kind of know how they get from point A to point B already. And you can tell like a side adventure, but you can't tell anything really deeper about their character or anything because we already know that from the movies. And it's like, that's why you need other characters like Dr. Aphra and these other characters that they've created for the comics only, because without them, you can't tell any better stories. If you know it, like the main Star Wars comics, I would think with Luke and Leia and Han are limited in that respect. Whereas at least here, some of the old stuff before Empire came out, those guys, those comic artists and writers, they had a lot to work with. I mean, this, like we said earlier, they're talking about Luke and Leia having, being romantically interested, and that's something that we definitely can't have later on. Now, I don't know if I don't know if they were writing about that because they were skirting the edges because they knew already, or they didn't know and they just did it because it seemed natural, having seen the first movie, because it is a natural love triangle in the first movie. It's, Han, the roguish, bad boy who is probably going to be more attractive to the woman. It's a trope that goes back for centuries. But and then you have Luke, the nice kid who doesn't really get the attention because he's nice, and but he's the one that's really the best for her, and that's how you'd imagine that would have played out. Just watching the Star Wars movie in a vacuum, you can feel that's what they're working with, kind of. But Lucas has never been good with that kind of thing, so it's just hinted at barely, and so the comic writers jump on that, I think, and they see that and they go, oh, we can really develop this and make it interesting. We maybe can't consummate anything, and I don't mean that in the technical sense either, but they know they can just work with that and have that as a theme that you can play back and forth with and make it interesting, to make it a little bit deeper than just, let's go stop the Empire. Let's go find the new base. Let's go, let's go save somebody.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a lot of it. The comics they do, they add certain layers, like Akbar's in some of the comics and stuff, which is quite cool, but there's a lot of just little bits. There's no like big... There is a big storyline. It says like I'm taking away from the creators, but the Star Wars comics, a lot of them are good. There's no bad ones in the new canon. Most of them are just okay, but there's a couple of gems. But yeah, let's... Final thoughts then, Matt. Say your final statement, because I'll get wrapped up in another conversation again otherwise. And... because I really need a wee now, so that's the real reason now that I need to go. That and Megan's messaging me saying, "Dinner's nearly ready."
I did that to Tony.
Tell us.
I did that to Tony too, and kept him on for another half hour.
No, genuinely, normally I'm 100% up for that, but my bladder is in pain. But you've only got 5 minutes before I wet myself.
That's okay.
So don't rush. I am joking.
Don't rush.
But yeah, tell everyone the last final thoughts. Don't rush. Well, issue number 5.
Let's go back to the very first issue of Star Wars from Marvel in 1977. Now, remember that first panel and the opening? No, I had a great time, Mike. I really did. And I can talk forever about stuff that I love. And obviously you can tell I have a lot of love for comics, and my childhood enjoyment of Star Wars is not over. It's still there. I'm just experiencing it a new way. So I really had a great time talking. And anytime we want to talk about Star Wars or something else, again, I'm obviously totally up for it. Thank you so much for having me. And where can you find me? That's probably what you want. That's the final stuff. Where can you find me on the internet? DC Comics News with weekly comic reviews. And then, of course, Classic Comics on the Comics in Motion Network. You can follow the show on Twitter at Lloyd Comics. You can follow me personally on Twitter at MattB_Lloyd. I also will do a lot with music on my personal Twitter handle outside of comics, just because that's my other passion. You can also follow the show or ask questions of me on the show at an email address, classiccomicsmbl@gmail.com. And of course, many podcast appearances, guesting on the Comics in Motion Network. In other words, there's so many now I can't keep track.
The same with me. I've got like in my show notes for Genuine Chit-Chat and Star Wars Comics and Can, I've only got 4 or so just lines of like, I guested on blah blah blah's podcast. Here's the link. And then every now and then I just have to kind of be like, right, I have to cull a few of these because I can't have 12 guest spots that I've done in the last month all filling up the description. That can't be the only thing. I totally get that. But yeah, this was so much fun, Matt. And what we'll have to do is you'll have to come back on the show in a few months' time. And then what we'll do is we'll basically have the same conversation again. Not about this specifically, but we'll just have this as a jumping off point, because what will be quite cool is if we both, by that point, if I've read some Legends comics or if you have a recommendation or something, because I've got Marvel Unlimited. I'm pretty certain a lot of the old school Star Wars stuff is on there. So we can always just have that as a starting point and then talk about your other stuff. Because I knew when talking with you, we'd be able to easily talk for 2 hours. So there's certain questions that I didn't even bring up. Like I told you I had those 4 notes. We spoke about one of them. So we've actually only done 1/4 of the amount of topical conversations we can have for half a page of notes that I've done. So you're going to have like at least another, 3 appearances in the next year or so. So, I'll definitely have you on again. We'll talk more about classic comics, how you got into them and stuff, and Star Wars will probably come up because in most conversations I have, I somehow manage to slip it in, or my guest does. It's quite rare it doesn't come up in some way. Normally I like to throw a little Star Wars metaphor in there someplace, just for the fun of it. I'll include a link to, in the description, I'll put both your Twitter handles, more details about your show, all those other wonderful things. But yeah, it's been so much fun chatting with you, Matt. Seriously, it's
here, man.
Just chatting about Star Wars, the fun things and the silly things. And it's great to talk with someone. And the one thing I really appreciate about you, and you're one of my favorite kind of guests on the show, is that you are so passionate about what you like. And that's what I want. I want people to come on the show and tell me what they're passionate about. And although this was very Star Wars centric, listening to you talk about classic comics was really cool. So when you come on the show again in a few months' time, whatever, we'll get it sorted and we'll aim a bit more on classic comics, because I think hopefully some of my listeners now will be like, oh, let's go listen to classic comics, guys.
Yeah,
seriously, go check them out. Yeah, exactly. And then when Matt returns, you'll then have that, a bit more context to certain things. So yeah, once again, just thank you so much, Matt. Genuinely, it's been so much fun having you on.
I had a great time. I'm happy to talk anytime. Thank you.
And that's the end of the podcast. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. Make sure you go give Matt B Lloyd all the love in the world, because, this podcast was so much fun to do, and it was so much fun having him on as well. And I can't wait to have him on in the future as well to talk about Golden Age stuff that isn't specifically about Star Wars. But if you do want to know about classic comics and Golden Age comics, it is a really, really interesting place to go into. And Matt's show on Comics in Motion, it airs every other Monday, and which is where my Star Wars podcast airs, the feed of Comics in Motion. Anyway, you listen to Genuine Chit-Chat, you should be able to find Comics in Motion on there. And yeah, classic comics is really, really interesting. I really recommend you guys go check that out. So what have we got in the pipeline then? What have we got recorded? So I've actually got a few things recorded since we last spoke, because I've been very busy the last 2 weeks. So I've got Tom Everatt, who came on a couple weeks ago. He came on again, and I've got a two-parter recorded with him about stagecraft and a few other bits and pieces along those lines. So that'll be released later, because I don't want to release it too close to the other episode I did with him. I've got the next week's one is probably going to be my episode with Goff. Goff of Beer Nuts Productions. He's been on the show 3 or 4 times now. He's got a new comedy film out that's really interesting to talk about, and he also recently started a podcast, so we spoke about that for quite a lot of the episode. So if you want to hear about a blind Australian gentleman starting up his own podcast who's got his own film production company, then make sure you tune in next week, because that's going to be the conversation. The week after that, I have got a 2-parter recorded with the bassist and the vocalist of a band called Royals. Now, Royals are a pop punk band. They're fairly local to me, and they are releasing an EP. It'll be, at the time of this recording, it will be in about 2 weeks' time. But what I'm planning on doing is releasing part 1 of my chat with Royals the week before their EP release, and then part 2 will be released after their EP has been released. So it's kind of, my releases are going to be on either side of their release, like a nice little sandwich. So we speak about pop punk and the diversity in the genre and songwriting and all those usual things. But if any of you guys want to go check out Royals before listening, I'd really recommend it. There's some really, really good songs out there. You can find them on Spotify and YouTube and all that sort of stuff. Their recent single is Jaded, but I think my favourite songs of theirs, they've got Worldwide Catastrophe that's amazing, Out of Reach that's amazing, Fair Weather Friend that's amazing, and my favourite song of theirs probably is Gone, and that's going to be the last single they released with this EP. But go check them out on Spotify or anything if you haven't listened to it. If you're not a big fan of pop punk, still go listen to it, because I'm not overly the biggest fan of pop punk in general, but they're really catchy, they're a lot of fun, and Out of Reach is a hard song not to like. So that's going to be Royals. Then the week after that, I'm likely going to release the episode that I recorded literally a couple of hours ago with a gentleman named Michael Mccormick. Now, Michael Mccormick is a puppeteer. Now, he actually did the puppet work for, or at least a chunk of the puppet work for Dark Crystal. He did a lot of the puppet work for Labyrinth. He created the character Salacious Crumb, the little Kowakian monkey lizard that cackles a lot in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. And he's just been involved with quite a few cool things. And he does a lot of Punch and Judy stuff, which I know people in the UK will know what Punch and Judy is, so he's done a lot of those, and we had a really, really good conversation, and we spoke over Skype, and I've recorded our video element, and he said he's happy for me to use it. So I'm gonna, on YouTube, I'll be releasing probably the episode all in one go, and it's gonna be showing him with the puppets and things. I may end up releasing it in 2 parts. I haven't fully made my mind up about that. It's quite a long conversation, about an hour and a half long, 1 hour and 45 minutes long. So I'm kind of on the fence. I'll figure that out when I kind of come to it, and depends how busy I am at the time. But I should be releasing that on YouTube with video, because he showed some of the puppets he uses. He showed, there's actually a puppet he used specifically in Labyrinth that he made that is actually in the film, which is really cool. He showed me that. He showed me the Punch and Judy stuff that he had was cool as well. There's just a lot of really interesting aspects of puppetry that I think people don't really appreciate. And yeah, Michael Mccormick is an expert in that. So it was really, really cool chatting to the bloke. He's a really, really nice guy, and he wants to come on the show again at some point, and he's got other things in the pipeline. So that is really everything I've got recorded at the moment. I've still got other things on the list to be recorded, things booked in with other people, and other things that I'm just kind of waiting for a date to be booked in as well. But I'm busy. There's a lot of stuff. If I stop podcasting now, you guys would still have content for the next 6 weeks. So, all good in that regard. Aside from that, the only other thing to say about my Patreon and my Star Wars show, patreon.com/genuine Chit-Chat. Go there right now. You can listen to me and Megan's Afterthought shows completely for free. The Witcher Series 1 and Star Wars The Phantom Menace are up there now completely for free. Episodes, new ones of those get released every week. Normally it's 2 a week. And also, if you if you pay as little as £1 a month, which is, in my opinion, very, very little. But if you donate that tiny amount of money, you get access to part 2 of Genuine Chit-Chats a week early. You get them on a feed with complete unsplit episodes. And also you get access to our Afterthoughts show, which is what I just mentioned, which is me and Megan talking about movies and series that we've watched. We watched some classic movies, we watched some new movies, we watched some documentaries, we watched some series. We tackle quite a lot of variety of things. So if you fancy a movie and TV podcast that the episodes are only like 10 to 20 minutes long, then it's a really good thing, because I'm quite a nerd, Megan's not as nerdy in things, and we do disagree on films quite a lot, which is quite refreshing. So she quite likes some of the chick flick films a bit more, I like some of the sci-fi films a bit more. We actually just recorded an episode on Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, and she really didn't like Dark Crystal and really likes Labyrinth. So it's quite interesting, those sort of dynamics and things. I mean, that will be released probably in June sort of time, that episode of Afterthoughts. But if you guys are willing to pay me £1 a month, it would mean the absolute world to me, and you get access to the link which has got the feed. So you just put the feed in your podcast app, and then you get access to all the early Genuine Chit-Chat stuff and all the episodes of Afterthoughts. And then there's my Star Wars show. Go over to Comics in Motion. I mean, if you listen to this, if you have genuinely just listened to this whole podcast and you don't know I have a Star Wars podcast, then shame on you. Go listen to my Star Wars podcast. It's called Star Wars Comics in Canon. I tackle each Star Wars comic. I go through mini-series, one-shots, and ongoing series. I go through the narratives. I explain what happens in the story. I do connections, who certain characters are, planets, species, all kinds of connections and things. So if you ever read a comic and you go, that character kind of looks familiar. Who is this Ochi of Bestoon? Or who is this character? And you don't know. Well, I go through the comic and I basically tell you who people are. So that's a lot of fun. It's really good if you've never read a comic before. It's a good entry point to comics, and I tell you the story. So it's not imperative to read the comic, but I don't read all the dialogue. I don't go through every single explicit detail. So if it's a good way to listen to me talk about a few comics, and if it sounds like your kind of thing, then you can pick up some of the comics. Or you can just listen to my show, never touch a Star Wars comic, but still have the knowledge of the narratives in place that come from the comics, as well as loads of other, bonus bits of information. I've done a whole episode on Count Dooku, a whole episode on Darth Maul, like how he survives, all these sort of things. So, check out my Star Wars podcast on Comics in Motion. It's also on the YouTube. It's on Genuine Chit-Chat's YouTube channel. I've started putting things in playlists on there as well. So you can go to Genuine Chit-Chat on YouTube. You can go to Comics in Motion on any of the usual places you're listening to this. And check out my Patreon for free stuff if you don't want to give me any money. But if you do, then you can get even more stuff. And if you don't want to support the show financially, please review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. Share on social media, tell your friends, or even just shout me out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any social media. It generally means the absolute world when any of you guys do that. Anyway, guys, enough from me. Thank you so much for listening, as always. Make sure you subscribe so you can keep an eye out to all the other people that I've got on coming over the next few weeks and months. And as always, guys, just thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you next week.